Hey, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Just trying to get everybody in here, but we're going to get started now. My name is Deneen. I am the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And today we are very fortunate to have a panel of our banking and credit union customers to speak to us about their Finserv innovation journeys, how they're digitally transforming, how they're automating, why they're doing it, and just speaking a little to their own experiences with what that's been like for them. So before we get started, just wanted to talk a little bit about Technology Advisors for those of you who don't know us. We are a digital transformation consultancy out of Chicago. We've been doing this for over 30 years. In the respect to the banking and credit union industry, are members of the Illinois Bankers Association and the Community Bankers Association of Illinois. In our 30 years doing this, we've become pretty good at helping our clients with process automation, helping our clients integrate systems together to get more out of their solutions so that they can bridge all that data together. And we are really good at what we do because we offer ongoing support to those customers, and we also offer a dedicated customer success team that checks in periodically, works with them to continuously improve what they're doing. And we offer educational experiences such as this, where we try to give our customers the greatest breadth of information about the products that they're using so that they can use them to the best of their ability. So our interviewers today are going to be our COO, Megan Sheehan, and our Customer Success Manager, Megan Dries.
Hi, everybody.
Before we get started on the interviews and introducing our panelists, when you registered, you probably saw that we sent you a survey afterwards, and I just thought you might be curious as to how other people in the webinar answered the survey. So we asked, what were your motivations for joining this webinar? A good breadth of you were saying you're just kind of curious about what kinds of tech are out there. Some of you are interested to see what others in your industry are doing. And there were a good handful of you that said something else. And those answers ranged from everything from I'm an integrator to our company starting to investigate digital transformation solutions to I want to learn more about what no code and low code are. And this seems like a good opportunity to do it. So a range of reasons for why everybody is interested in this, and hopefully we can address all of those in today's discussion. So let's find out a little bit more about our panelists today. And let me just fix one thing here. Okay. So we have three customers with us today. The first is Consumer Credit Union. Consumers Credit Union is one of the largest credit unions in Illinois. They've got over 178,000 members. They're open to the public, and they serve the Chicagoland area with 16 branches throughout the north and west suburbs. They are just on the beginning part of their CRM journey. They've recently completed documenting their requirements and planning for their implementation. So they're going to speak to that part of the process. So I'm going to pause here for a second and let our Consumers Credit Union participants introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Kapusinski, VP of Enterprise Systems with Consumers Credit Union.
Hello, I'm Will Simon. I'm our VP of Remote Sales and Service at Consumers Credit Union.
Hi, and I'm Will McCray from Consumers. I'm a project manager with Consumers Credit Union.
Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome. We also have Cornerstone Bank with us today. Cornerstone Bank is a community bank that serves central Massachusetts. They have 10 branches, and their approach is delivering a personal touch and that's really the hallmark of their community banking. So Cornerstone Bank selected Creatio as their CRM a little bit over a year ago, and so they've now been live on it for about 4 months. So this is nice because you've got Consumer Credit Union, who's right at the beginning of this. Now we've got Cornerstone Bank, who's a little bit more in the middle of it. And I'll take a moment to let our representatives from Cornerstone introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Mariani, and I am the CRM database administrator and essentially project manager for Cornerstone Bank.
Thank you, Sam. And then finally, we have Ent Credit Union. Ent serves over 495,000 members throughout Colorado. They have 54 service centers, and they were initially founded to serve the financial needs of Ent Air Force Base, and they since expanded to really serve the entire Front Range region of Colorado. Ent is the biggest CRM veteran that we have here today with us. They've been using their CRM system for 4+ years. And so they're going to provide that experience of, having used the system for a while and how the journey is continuing after they've gone live. So I'll turn it over to the Ent team to introduce themselves.
Hey, my name is Matt Pinkowski, and I am the Director of Engagement Systems here at Ent Credit Union. And fun fact, we actually just crossed over 500,000 members just this week. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And hi, I'm George Smith. I'm the CRM administrator.
All right, thanks everybody. Okay, so I'm going to turn off these slides for now and let everybody be full view so that we can start the discussion.
All right, great. Thanks, Deneen. So what our plan is for today is to kind of walk through the CRM journey in the order that would happen. So we're going to start with talking primarily with the team from Consumers Credit Union about the process of selecting a CRM. And so my first question is going to be, what got you started in looking for a CRM? What business or software problems were you trying to solve that led you to look at CRM systems?
Yeah, I can take that. I think it was a couple of big things. The first one is that we didn't have a CRM or any kind of central location for any of the information about our members, right? So that was a big one, and we immediately realized that we had, for example, our call center staff had maybe 17 or 18 different systems that they're going into to solve a particular problem, which is not unique to consumers. That's for everyone having that problem, right? And in addition to trying to integrate, a lot of different systems into one, so the employees can solve problems quicker, they can see a better, a more transparent or easy view to see what's going on with a member. Integrating all that into one spot obviously just makes a lot of sense, and need a CRM to kind of do that. On top of that, the other thing that we knew we needed or wanted, very much related, was a 360 view of the member. And that's probably one of the biggest requirements we have as a part of the whole project is, again, if a member calls in or writes in or however it is that they contact us, we can pull up their account in one spot and see all of the pertinent information that we need most of the time. So that was a big business problem that we're trying to solve. Another huge one that we're trying to solve for is for case management. So what was happening in our current state was every department had their own little list of rules about how you're supposed to contact them, how you're supposed to send them work. A lot of times that was either via Teams chat or via an email. Once you sent it off, it just kind of was shipped into space and you never saw it again or had no idea if it was being done or if it was already done. And there was really no kind of look back to say if the member called back, for example, no one would have any idea what had happened with the thing that they wanted done. So even prior, as we were kind of going through this process, one of the things we were looking at is we need to get a workflow system that is the same for everybody. And especially for those that are dealing with members on the front line to say, this is the way we submit cases, and then let's set this up so we can move it through the process if there are other departments that are needed to help us, get that job done more efficiently and obviously a lot more effectively for the member. and hopefully even provide them updates along the way, like the pizza tracker, right? If we can do something like that, that would be great. So I think those were the two big business cases for us.
That makes sense. So once you identified that there was a need for a CRM platform, how did you go about trying to select a CRM system?
Yeah, the first thing we realized is that we needed help to do that, right? So we got a group of people together and we went through an assess and recommend project to find a partner that could help us figure out all the things that we didn't know to ask when it comes to CRM selection. So we signed in with a consulting partner to help us kind of go through that process, to set up the RFPs, to set up kind of all of the things that, make sure we're asking the right questions and that we're really getting a system that's going to deliver on, what we need to fix.
So outside of that consultant, who was involved in your selection process and why did you choose to involve those people?
Oh boy, it's a long time ago now. It feels like it was a lot of folks. So I was involved. We had the VP over our branch network was involved. Eric, who's on the call here, was obviously involved from a technology standpoint. But we had people from, I think all different parts of the credit union, really at the end of the day, at least having a voice in that. So not a lot of people. I don't want to make it sound like we had 50 people in a room, but I think like every major vertical area of the credit union was covered by someone. And then we obviously had our project sponsors at the time were our CXO and then our CIO / COO. So that was it. And obviously Will McCray, our esteemed and excellent project manager, leading the charge for us.
Great. And why did you select Creatio? What about Creatio connected for you as a platform?
I think Will McCray, I'm going to let you kind of take that one because I know what my opinions were, but you have a better, I think, all-encompassing scope of why Creatio was selected.
Sure. Thanks, Will. And from one Will to another, very well said. Yeah. So as Will had mentioned, we had a process in mind, and the first part of that process was to make sure that we were asking the right questions of that CRM platform, and also to help us frame for ourselves what mattered to us from a CRM platform. And the short answer is that when we evaluated our potential platform candidates, they scored the highest, or at least was one of the highest scoring candidates in the criteria that we had identified for the CRM platform. It met our business needs, as well as from a relationship standpoint, they seem like a better fit. And I would say that how they became to separate themselves was, as we went through our evaluation process, we had a number of engagements with leaders within Creatio. We've had some conversations with peers that have had engagements with Creatio. One of them is on the call with Ent, and we came away impressed with their commitment to maintaining a positive and supportive relationship.
Great.
And I think just to add on to that, we're hypersensitive to the relationship aspect of things just because we've been dealing with some other of our large vendors, and while they claim to be, to want to have a partnership with you, it has not, especially last year for us at least, we just had a lot of challenges. And so I think that was just top of mind for us, and it really, the way that things went with Creatio just really resonated with us. They seemed very genuine. And so that just gave us, I think, the feeling like, yeah, they would be a great partner to work with.
Okay, that's good to hear. Does anyone want to add anything else related to the selection phase before we move into talking about requirements planning?
Yeah, just really quickly, one of the things that occurred during our selection process with the consultant that we used was in order to create the format for what our prospective vendors were going to present to us. We created with that consultant our use cases, and there was a lot of work that went into the creation of the use cases that each of the vendors was going to have to really structure their demos around. And so those use cases, really, we've used them ever since that point in the process, all the way through the current point that we're at in our the tail end of our inception phase of implementation. And so just that work, and the money that we spent with that consultant, we felt like was very well spent, and the time was very well spent as well to do it at that point in the process, as opposed to waiting until you start going through implementation. It just helps. It helped us frame the demos and the conversations with the prospective vendors really nicely for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know it certainly helped us as we moved into that requirements phase in terms of having that pre-work already done to structure things as we moved forward.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and transition then into talking about that next phase. So once Creatio was selected as your CRM platform, we moved into the inception phase or requirements phase of planning out your implementation. So for this phase of the process, when you were planning your implementation, who's been involved in that phase of the project?
Yeah, so I'll start that off, and then Will McCrae, if you want to hop in, if I've missed anything, feel free. So at the outset of our implementation, our CCU project management team, mainly Will, and then TAI, worked very closely together on what the overall process would look like and entail. And then once we kind of had that framework, we really kicked off our inception phase with TAI by creating project teams that aligned with our defined use cases. And so we defined our use cases as prospect to lead, lead to close, close to onboarding, and onboarding a happy member. And that last use case, because of where we've been at with our service scores, we put the highest priority on. And so we developed the teams for each of those use cases based on what those use cases were about. And so we grabbed people from all across the organization. We expanded things from what the team that we had during the process to identify the vendor that we were going to go with. But we really pulled leaders and subject matter experts from every area of our organization to place on the appropriate use case teams, to be part of the overall implementation project. And then the leads of those teams were really heavily involved in the overall planning, along with my team on technology, and then business leads just from across the organization, but business leads for the project, which is myself and Will Sign-In, and then of course project management with CCU and TAI. So that's I can't go through, like Will said earlier, I can't go through the entire list of everybody who was involved, but it's really in our world an all hands on deck project, and we feel it needs to be such just to make sure that it's as successful as we need it to be.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a great job of making sure kind of all across the organization, everyone has a chance to share their input and be heard to make sure the system will work for everybody.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Eric said, and he was spot on, having that structure around the use cases up front really allowed us to build our teams accordingly. But also understanding that there was overlap between those teams. So those weren't not necessarily distinct teams. And in many cases, we found that a number of the same people were on multiple use case teams. But what it allowed us to do was when we're having those conversations, really structure the conversation around that use case and provide a little bit of focus in those discussions, because as Eric and Will have alluded to, this is really enterprise wide in terms of its impact and can go in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of people that would like a bunch of different things, but structuring our teams around the use cases allowed us to maintain a focus in terms of defining those requirements, with understanding there was bound to be, just the nature of it, a little bit of duplication, a little bit of overlap, but it allowed us to it made sure that we did not overlook anything between those use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, my next question was going to be, what was your process for determining your requirements? I think we've already talked quite a bit of that, but I'll give you a chance if you wanted to add anything else around the process itself. And I'll also throw in, because people always want to know, how long did it take?
Yeah, so I'll touch on how long did it take, because that's an easier question to answer. But so we kicked off our implementation phase in the middle of October, and we're just about to finish up with the inception phase of implementation. And so all in all, about 5 months. But I think, if we hadn't done the work on the use cases ahead of time during the initial part of the project, that it would have been considerably longer for sure. So yeah, overall, because of that, it was about 5 months for us. But then I think just for the process, like we talked a little bit about the process already, but I think some of the things that really helped us hone in on requirements in general was just taking what we currently have as our case management or workflow capacity, and just catalog those things, knowing that in some fashion they need to be moved into Creatio, maybe not in the exact existing state, but hopefully some better state than what we're in right now. But then also holding the Moscow meetings to figure out what do we have to have, what should we have, and and kind of prioritizing things, and that really helped us build into our integration planning process, right? So we take all of the requirements, and then we start working internally and in conjunction with TAI on really identifying all the data elements that are going to be required to fulfill the needs based on the business requirements that have been defined. And so so that was kind of that integration planning and mapping some of those data elements was really kind of the last phase of that inception phase for us. But that was kind of at a high level, what went into it.
And I would like to add on a little bit here too. So as Eric mentioned, it was about a 5-month process, but also understand, just to give a little bit of background within the consumers organization, there just was not a lot of exposure and experience to a CRM platform. And so that entire 5 months was not necessarily defining requirements. What we were able to take advantage of within that 5 months was some training provided by TAI on what Creatio can provide and how it can be used. There was also some interviews with business leads and others within the project team to better understand, what are some of our operational goals for the platform deployment. And then, from a pure brass tacks perspective, where we started really getting into each of the use cases and pulling out user stories within each of those use cases, That was closer to about a 3-month process. But we were only able to get there with some of that hand holding from the get-go, bringing us up to speed on potential usage for a CRM platform, because we just did not have that experience in-house.
All right, last question in this section. What challenges did you face and how have you tried to resolve those challenges?
So I just had a couple, during the initial stages of business requirements gathering, we were finding that, I think kind of what Will just alluded to with the lack of experience with CRMs, that we weren't getting a ton of input from the business, or we weren't getting the input that we felt like we should be getting. And what was happening was our technology folks were kind of filling the void. And we really decided that we needed to stop doing that, and had to force the business into defining the requirements themselves. And so, by intentionally making the technology folks, stop offering up suggestions or filling the void, and with Will pressing the business and saying, this is really something that we need to hear from you on, that really helped move things along and just kind of got the business more actively engaged in the process. So that was, I would say, the first thing. And I think the other challenge has been, and I think it continues to be, is just tempering expectations for what the initial product is going to end up as. Both at the outset of the project overall, but then also more recently, we've really had to really restate, or initially state, but then now restate that this isn't going to be all things to all people all at once. It's going to be a journey. The initial rollout is going to have a lot of the functionality that we want, but certainly not all of the functionality that we're going to be looking for. And so really, I think what kind of fueled that a little bit was during business requirements, we were, the no word wasn't in our, vernacular, right? We weren't saying that this is possible or this is not possible. We didn't want to stifle that requirements process, but we understood at the time that certain, of those requirements were just not going to be viable for day one. And so, so I think it was after the fact where there was a little consternation where people were like, well, wait a minute, you're telling me that what we just talked about is not going to be available for the initial rollout. So I think that has just been a challenge, and I think it's going to continue to be a challenge as we go through the project.
Sure.
Those were my two. I don't know, Wills, if you guys have any other ones.
Well, from my perspective, as per usual, it's scope creep, but you did allude to it to some extent in terms of talking about expectations. I will say, and I think you were spot on with the first one. In our initial discussions, myself and Eric and Will as business leads, as well as our technical SMEs, our voice was heard too much initially. And how we got around it was that I yelled a lot. Just kidding. Sort of.
It felt like that. Yeah.
But no, we certainly encouraged the business leads, and whenever they did offer input, I made sure to follow up with them to share with them how much their input was valued, and to encourage continued input. And I think we got to the point where they were certainly feeling a lot more comfortable sharing their input. But kind of towards, I would say the only thing I would add to what Eric had to say was, the more the team became aware of what was possible
Hmm.
Within the CRM, the more often suggestions or quote unquote requirements started to come up that were not necessarily tied to our goals.
Sure.
And so we just had to point that out and level set some expectations.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a balancing act with the, when a platform can do a million things, you can't do them all at once. You gotta prioritize and start with the important things and then add more as you go.
All right, so then moving along this journey, I'd like to talk about the planning and process for going live. And
Megan, you missed me. You missed another stage.
I did. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Before going live, there's the development stage. Moving along primarily to Cornerstone Bank at this point. As you think about that development phase, who was involved in the development of your CRM system?
Internally at the bank, we had myself as the main, project manager, like the driver behind the CRM project, as well as the administrator. We held regular meetings with stakeholders from the various customer-facing departments that would be using it the most, as well as getting some help from our IT team. Externally, we worked heavily with tech advisors, Creatio, and our financial core provider.
All right, great. So what was your process for implementing Creatio and about how long did it take?
So after we met with our various stakeholders to determine, what they wanted to be included in Creatio and what Creatio could do for them, find out their case uses, we set out to start bringing our data into Creatio from our core provider. That process did not go as smoothly as we expected it to, due to missing information and long response times from our core provider. The implementation process took, since kickoff, the initial kickoff meeting, took approximately 9 months, with a large chunk of that time unfortunately being dedicated to deciphering the data extracts that we got from our main provider.
Okay. What would you do differently if you were to do it again?
One of the things I would do differently would be to use different report systems for getting the data initially for Creatio. We were relying on some data extracts from our core provider, expecting those to have the information we wanted and whatnot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of missing information, not able to decipher the reports in the format they gave us, and then very long response times whenever we had questions for them. I would have used that time to instead learn some of our other report setting software, because we do have a few different platforms available here, and then use that instead. It probably would have taken about much time, but we would have had more accurate information from the start.
Sure. What challenges did you face and how did you resolve them?
And of course, I wouldn't keep repeating it. The biggest challenge was, again, that data extract. It should have been the easiest part, and it was the hardest part.
Yeah.
But luckily, with the help of tech advisors and just us keep asking questions and want us to figure them out, we were able to use those data extracts and the Starfish program to connect them and map them to bring them over into Creatio. And using that Starfish program, we've been able to use it to bring in other reports and data from other sources as well. So we're continuing to expand upon that. Another challenge, which it sounds like it's maybe an industry standard, is working with those heavily siloed departments and finding better ways for them to interact and communicate with each other while building Creatio to fit their various needs and often overlapping needs and wants. Finding those case uses that, work for all of them and seeing where we can split them up, where they don't overlap well enough. But to get over that, we had a lot of, regular department specific meetings along with mixed department meetings, which we are continuing to do since we've gone live. We call it our Creatio Steering Committee. With that, we've been working toward, better communication, getting that continued feedback, and better agreements on how Creatio is going to be used.
All right. Anything else that Sam or anyone else wants to add about the actual implementation or development phase of your project? All right, then Megan, I will turn it over to you.
Now we can talk about planning to go live. All right. So Sam, I'll start with you because you just recently went live within the last few months. What was your planning process and your decision-making process for how you decided to train all of the end users?
So for our training, we actually developed a short in-person training for all of our users. A little different depending on the user base, where we had more hands-on for our our branch staff roles. We gave them we had about 3 hours. We set that down in the training room. We had them in the sandbox environment of Creatio, so they really got to play with it. We went through each of the steps, what's available, how to navigate and whatnot. So that really helped get people in it and trying it out without fear of messing anything up. In addition to that, we also created step-by-step user guides, with screenshots and instructions and notes for the processes that we've rolled out so far, and we have them readily available on our intranet for everybody.
Okay, and with all of those different resources, how has user adoption been?
Excuse me. So Creatio is our first CRM platform for the bank. It's something that most people here have not used before. It was a little slow to start, even with the initial training. People were hesitant to use it as it was yet another program. They weren't really seeing the benefits of it yet. But since we've been introducing the dashboards for easier supervisor overview, people are starting to get in there now that they're seeing that there's notes on customers. They're actually seeing the history value of those notes, so they're able to look back on it. And then again, having the dashboard has really helped the supervisors be able to keep an eye on their folks and able to provide feedback to them as well. Some of the other things I've improved is, getting that feedback from stakeholders, finding out the things that are maybe slight pain points that we didn't quite catch before we went live, and we can make, adjustments to make it easier for them to use on a daily basis. With all that, we've definitely been seeing our daily use pick up a lot, and we're definitely seeing them use different aspects of our Creatio platform more as we go on.
Okay, and for your rollout, was it phased or all users at once?
It's going to be a phased rollout. We're still technically in our first phase. We wanted to avoid changing too many daily procedures at once. With our current first phase, we did replace the referral program that we were using previously. So this is as well as adding the addition of relationship notes to Creatio. So those are the first parts of the first phase that we rolled out, along with tasks. Our next phase was marketing, which is kind of like an in-between phase, since it was only affecting a few people. So we actually ended up rolling that out sooner than we thought we were going to. So that has been in place as well. But our next phase is going to be introducing cases, as a way to log and handle customer complaints and issues. But we are waiting to do that, because we have a lot of different things we can do for this first phase, from the feedback we've received so far since we've gone live, in order to enhance it, to make it easier for their day-to-day before introducing a whole nother aspect to it.
Okay. And George, I'd like to kind of call out, just because you've gone through a couple different go live processes at Ent. You had your initial go live a few years ago, and last year you went live on the new financial services licensing. So can you share your perspective on, how you can prepare users for training and help drive user adoption?
Sure, yeah. So, as Megan just discussed, that I've been here for about 3.5 years, a little over 3.5 years. We've been with Creatio about 4, a little over 4. So I came in pretty early into the project. We started out with a custom solution. So we had taken their sales module and kind of come up with our custom solution in order to kind of fit our needs at that time. Like the rest of, like everybody else on the call, this was our first CRM at Ent as well. So there were a lot of needs that were unknown, a lot of requirements that we went through. We gathered that, I think again, as it's been mentioned before, we had a hard time saying no to a lot of our people. I think that getting buy-in, kind of giving them what they needed was a big push from us. But with that, we ended up a couple years into our custom solution. We realized that there were a lot of tools that we wanted to utilize that weren't necessarily native to our custom package. So we started looking into the Finserv module from Creatio, and again, we went through and did a re-implementation and launched our financial services module. Now, from a training standpoint, we're a very lean team. So when we first launched, we had myself, our director, and then a project manager who wasn't really involved. So there were really two of us that really launched the program. And we really relied on, we have a training team. And so we relied on them as well. So, and I think this is kind of dipping into the next question, but we kind of had, we started out with about 10 users. And so that was very easy for us, very manageable from a training standpoint. There's two people. We would, we had a class, then we'd go sit with them, do side-by-sides. And, as we went from 10 to 300 to 800, then to 1,200 users. So with each different iteration, we've had quite a bit of training. And so in conjunction with our training team, who we've kind of concocted a couple different classes for regarding whether they're in a branch, whether they're in the call center, whether they're in back office. And we also utilize our intranet. We have our intranet page where all of our users can go. We have a one-page, kind of a front and back, easy, quick reference guide for them. We also have a full user guide that's available for them. And then e-learning. So we also we're stepping into more of an e-learning environment, to where we're going to be able to harness our new e-learning software to start training some of the CRM as well. And so we can kind of do some cool stuff with overlays and more interactive training. So that's kind of how we've approached it.
And Sam or George, any tips or things you would share looking back? Anything you feel you might have missed the first time around that would have helped drive adoption?
I think that, well, you don't know what you don't know, right? I think that, with it being our first CRM, a lot of our users, even we didn't necessarily know what the right solution was or what the right answer was. So I think really just opening those communication gates and having those tough discussions of, you might be requesting something that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it's having that conversation and really coming up with the best practice of, kind of working together, finding out what that best solution would be. So again, I don't know if we could do anything differently, because again, you don't know what you don't know. Now, in retrospect, there's, I think that there were some things that are specific or unique to Ent that we had gotten used to, that it was kind of breaking those habits. But I think just open communication and consistency has helped us a lot.
Okay. So that's a good lead in into continuous improvement. That's sort of the phase that Ent's at now. Matt, you joined the team and we're really spearheading some of the division reviews, seeing, what's changed within Creatio, how can you better utilize out-of-the-box features that weren't part of the product when the initial implementation happened. Can you talk a little bit about the structure of your team and how you are going about CRM management today?
Yeah. So, as George mentioned, the team started from just one person, which was my predecessor. And, you know, she was well supported by the project teams and a lot of stakeholders internally, obviously well supported by TAI and Creatio throughout that process as well. And, you know, eventually George came on board, we hired a support specialist and then continue to grow that team, eventually adding our fourth kind of team member in with a focus on more of like that user experience in our analyst role. And so we've pretty much kept that structure, and we've made improvements and we've refined kind of the roles and responsibilities, and we've increased the clarity and designation of each of those roles. That way, you know, everybody's kind of responsible for their own piece of the CRM. But even with a small team and specialization, there's still a lot of overlap. If any one of us is out of the office, any other member of the team can basically cover for that role. You know, we've got a pretty good overlap there. And so George may always be the best at, you know, one particular thing, but if he happens to be out on vacation for 2 weeks, the three of us that remain can make up for his departure, right? And we can kind of cover the grounds while he's out on vacation, sipping Mai Tais in Florida or whatever it is he's doing, right? And so that's really helped us, is to make sure that we're covering our bases. But so we actually kind of fall well in line with even Creatio's kind of their own structure for like their center of excellence. And so generally they recommend having somebody that's like a product owner, somebody who's really kind of driving the vision and the direction of the CRM. And that's primarily what I'm doing in my role as director. We want somebody who's going to be primarily responsible for the health and performance of the CRM, and that's basically George's role as the admin. We've got our support specialist who is primarily responsive to that reactive support. She's keeping our users happy. She's responding to all of the incoming questions and emails that we're getting throughout the day. And then our analyst is really working with those individual departments and those business groups, kind of really fulfilling that role of like success management, where he's going out to those groups and saying, okay, you've got these issues. Let's figure out what the right answer is to this problem. And let's come up with some new solutions here and figure out how those can fit into the larger scheme and the larger vision of the CRM throughout the entire organization.
Okay. And so within that team, how are you identifying what changes you actually want to make to the system?
Yeah, so this has been an ongoing process, and it continues to be one, right? I think in the spirit of continuous improvement, I don't think it's going to be something that we're ever going to be done with the CRM, right? I think a lot of people have this false assumption that it's 6 months to onboard and you're done and everything's just happy and copacetic and magically works, right? Even today, 4 years into our implementation, we have groups that are still expecting magic to come from our team. And that's just not the reality, right? It takes time to find the right solutions, to create those. Sometimes there is dependencies on the vendor, right? We have enhancements that even right now we're looking at, like the 807 release for Creatio, and we're waiting, 1 or 2 more weeks because we know that there's going to be enhancements in that. And those enhancements sometimes drive, process changes with those departments as well. So in terms of kind of choosing what projects to focus on or what changes, it's a gradient. There isn't a black and white answer, because you're going to be constantly adjusting to demands of the organization, change and evolution in the market, changing needs and demands from the members, internal stakeholder desires and drives to improve user experience and member experience. There's certainly motivation to seek ROI, right? So that's always going to be a competing priority. There's just so many factors that go into it. And so there isn't really one simple way to say, like, what change should we do, other than just constantly reevaluating and trying to figure out and really just doing your best. But then once we identify what those changes are, we, try to just prioritize our pipeline and our workload to make sure that we're able to meet those needs and meet those deadlines.
Okay. Anything you want to add about your internal change management process?
I think actually I wrote a note earlier. I think when Eric was talking, he had said something that sparked an idea about figuring out how to solve problems and stuff. Anyways, what I wrote down was that, problems will find you. You actually don't have to go out of your way to figure out what the organization wants, because the problems will find you. The suggestions will find you. And so then, what we found to be really successful is we let those problems come to us. but we don't just try to, give the immediate response. We actually try to digest that a little bit. We try to take it back to our team, think through the process, and try to see how that is going to fit into maybe the grander vision or the grander scheme of the CRM as a whole. And so even now, as problems surface or things that maybe we don't even think are problems, we're still going through that constant evaluation of, analyzing what solutions we have in place, past, present, or future, and trying to make sure that that is the right solution. Even if it's something that's today and it works and people are using it, that doesn't mean there isn't still room for improvement.
Absolutely. And for the last question for continuous improvement, how are you managing ongoing training for your users? So Ent scaled from 10 all the way to 1,200. What does ongoing training look like and new onboarding?
Yeah. So as George mentioned, we do have e-learning programs set up. We have, it's like an informal role, but we have CRM ambassadors throughout the organization that are really power users of the CRM. They're advocates of the CRM, and they will take up a lot of those training duties as well within the departments. They've got kind of specialization experience there. And so those kind of informal CRM ambassadors are very helpful to our ongoing training. But as we have broad reach and penetration throughout the organization with our CRM, we have the luxury of focusing on key departments at a time. As we're working on one particular department, we can focus on that department, develop some enhancements for that department, train that department, and we really don't have to impact the rest of the organization. But as we do encounter changes that are system-wide, we do find those changes where we have to retrain the entire organization, and then we start to lean on, organizational communication, sending out emails to @everyone.com, leveraging those e-learning, making sure those are mandatory, making sure people are going through those, creating the one-pagers that can be printed out and put on the desk of every single CRM user, and really just trying to make sure that we get the information out as much as possible, and we kind of hit that cadence with constant reminders to make sure that people are well prepared, so that way when that change eventually hits on Monday morning, they're not suddenly surprised. They've got the documentation, they've got the FAQ, they've got the one pager that they can reference to kind of adapt to that change. But we want the change to be not impactful. The hope is that with every change, it's an improvement in workflow and process. So even if it is different, hopefully it's less clicks or it's an easier process. And so the change isn't too much of a burden.
Okay. And then just wrapping up, open really for anybody. What are you seeing as current or future issues within the industry? And how is Creatio helping you mitigate any of those challenges?
So I just had, at least in my view, the pace of technological change in the industry, but for specifically consumers, smaller financial institutions trying to keep pace with the big budgets of the big banks, in a technology capacity at least. And you're never going to keep pace with the big banks. And so I think most smaller financial institutions understand that their service is a differentiator between them and the big banks. In the CRM, we heard from every group, every institution on this panel that Creatio is the first CRM that their institution has had. And so I do think that the CRM is really going to help us, further that differentiation, right? It's not that the big banks don't have a CRM, but I think that we will probably be able to envision just much better service by making use of the CRM, and that will drive efficiencies for us. And ultimately, I think that we just need to focus mostly on reducing friction for our members in their regular interactions with us. Not when they have to call us, but just how they interact with our products, such that when they do have to call us for something, those are more value add conversations than I'm resolving an issue for you. I think, as much as we can get away from the member having to call us because they have an issue, the better, we will be for it. And I think the CRM will really help us get in that direction.
I think maybe one of the biggest advantages of a CRM in our organization as well, we do have a ton of applications. Every vertical in our organization has their own set of applications that they're using, and the frontline members, or I should say the frontline employees, are expected to just keep up with that, right? So they do have 15, 16 applications on their desktops, and that's really hard to track. And so I think the CRM has the power to simplify the organization for those inbound teams. So for us, it's those users at the service center or in the call center. And our goal and our ultimate vision is to have one application on the desktop of our inbound teams. And that application is going to be the CRM. And that CRM should be these like singular point of entry for that user and for that member to the rest of the organization, no matter how many other applications are out there, whether it's loyalty programs or it's marketing automation or it's loan applications or whatever else we end up coming up with in the organization. We want that to be in one application, even as simple as phone integration, right? Being able to interact with a member, track the case, and call from the same application, like that is powerful and that is a value add, right? It's getting rid of even that dialer on the desktop has power, and so that's really where we're trying to go with the CRM. And I think that does lead to, as Eric was kind of talking about, that best-in-class member experience where we want to focus on personalization and we want to make sure that the conversations and the touch points we have with members are valuable and it's not just, I've got another problem. Because if every time you call your credit union and say, oh, the only time I call them is when I have a problem, well, that's not really a good relationship. So, yeah.
All right, any other thoughts on industry issues? Otherwise, Deneen, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for these awesome perspectives. It's really interesting to hear a lot of you dealt with some really similar issues. And then you each had kind of your own internal processes and internal ways of doing things that made that process really individual to you. So thank you so much to everybody. I think it really shed some light on how that entire process of evaluating the need for a CRM and then going through and actually getting to the point where your team is using that effectively. We saw all the spectrum on that. So I know we're a little bit over time. We started a little bit late. Appreciate anybody who's still on the call with us. Understand if you have to drop. I will send this recording and I'm going to clip out and make some more digestible recordings too, in case people want to hone in on specific points of this conversation. But what I really wanted to end with today, and apologies, you can see my screen, correct? Okay. It's not doing that fun little green highlight thing that it usually does, so that was concerning. So one thing I think that everybody was alluding to that we didn't really specifically state is, yes, this is a CRM, but it's also a no-code solution. And a lot of times when we talk about no-code solutions with potential customers, they kind of have this perplexed look on their face. And I think that's understandable because this idea of no code is kind of a newer concept or a lesser known concept. And essentially, if you know what a CRM is, a no code is just basically allowing more stakeholders to be involved in the process of the CRM and building all these automations and workflows that all of our panelists were talking about without having to have the coding knowledge that a traditional developer or IT person might have. And so that kind of gives more of your team members the ability to participate and to be part of that CRM journey. That is the type of solution that all three of these organizations chose. And we're going to be having a live event in September, specifically honing in on no code. So anybody who's curious to learn more about no code, its uses, its applications, that live event will be held at the Park Ridge Country Club in Park Ridge, Illinois. And it's going to be a full day event. I think we're doing like 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, still working out the exact timetable on that. But essentially, we're going to be talking about what are some of these trends that we're seeing that are affecting why people are adopting technologies like no code, technologies like CRM. We're going to have some experts there from Creatio and from technology advisors speaking to these tech trends. There's going to be talk about some of these more talk about some of these best practices, which all of our panelists, I think, hit pretty well. Sounds like you guys are on the right track with how you're approaching your projects, and that is fantastic. But for anybody who has not done this before, or maybe did an implementation of a software and it didn't go well, this is going to help guide you on what to expect and how to really get the most out of that. Of course, it helps that there's a free breakfast and lunch buffet, and we're doing a cocktail hour. Everybody loves food. And I just found out today that one of our key speakers, I'm very excited about, she actually helped us out with another workshop we did, and the feedback was fantastic from everybody. She is an expert at business writing. And so no matter what role you're in, if you're a CIO, a CEO, a team leader, a manager, a marketing person, that topic can apply to you, because we all have to do writing for our jobs, be it emails or presentations or what have you. And she just has the best advice and insights on how to improve that and how to communicate better with people. And she's also very sweet and funny. So we're just really excited to have her back again for this workshop in September. You guys are going to love her. So I'm going to include all information about this in the follow-up email, but if anybody has any questions that come to mind, or if they're interested in getting started with this type of project for their organization, you can reach out to us at sales@techieDB.com or via our phone number. You can also simply reply to that email that you get from me tomorrow. That's the marketing email. I will get that, and I can redirect your inquiry to whoever on our team is necessary for you to speak with. So again, I know we're a little over time. Thank you so much to all of our participants. We really appreciate hearing your guys' voices today and having you on our call. As I mentioned, I will send all this info out. So I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day and a fantastic rest of their week.
Thanks, everyone.
You take care.
Thanks, everybody.